right, and we're going to come back with episode 22. We have a very special guest. So, you remember a year ago we had Fire Chief Tom Everett on and stuff. So this podcast coming up, we're coming up on a 2-year anniversary. We got a couple little different group here that we have today than our normal group and stuff. And we'll reintroduce Paul. You guys might remember him from previous episode on we did on mental health. He talked to us about our Band-Aids, but yeah, today we have a police chief, Rex Mueller, that's going to be our guest, which is really awesome that we've kind of, talked to every now and again in passing, mentioned something about the podcast. So we're excited to have him on. We're getting the other chief, and we've had a sheriff, and we're just kind of making it full circle here with all the department heads. So welcome, Chief.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get into it here. And then Paul, I guess, quick shout out to Paul filling in real quick on the spot because
thanks for having
the other guys.
I was excited.
Things come up, so it's exciting to have former guests come back and be on the show because it's just more fun for everybody, right?
Right. Exactly.
So with that, I guess we'll just we'll kind of get after it, Chief. So we kind of have the list of questions. We like to just start really just like Ben says, we always just kind of go back to the beginning and work our way forward from there. So, I guess just, what's your story? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up and, how'd you get here?
Well, interestingly, I hardly ever left here. I grew up here. I was born here up at the old St. Luke's, the old building next to Unity Point now. Grew up here, went to local schools, grew up in the near north side. From a very young age, went to Catholic schools. Ended up at Heelan Catholic High School. Always had one of the things that was always with me during that, and I was an athlete and I participated in sports. But as you get along in your education and you figure out what am I going to do with my life, I always thought that my life would have something to do with art because I had artistic talents. Kind of have a family that's kind of a thing within my family. And as I grew up, I assumed, well, how do I make a career out of this? How do I translate this into something to do? And throughout high school, that was obviously art was my favorite subject, but you have the rest of the subjects, and I was fine in those, and then moved on to the University of South Dakota where I went to college, and then that's where I started out in art and education, and I had decided at that point in time that teaching was probably going to be my best avenues, so that I could somehow do something related to art, utilize my talents in a field that I thought was something that I wanted to do. My mom was a teacher. My dad at one time had been a teacher and a coach. And so, it seemed comfortable to me. And about halfway through my college years, I took a criminal justice course. And it was just for a history credit, and it was Intro to Criminal Justice. And the professor was a guy named Mike Roach at USD that was kind of a legend, very well respected, instructor that just in the last couple of years has retired. So the guy was basically an institution. And I took his class, and something about it spoke to me. What's funny about this is that was up until that point I'd been on the dean's list. I'd essentially gotten all A's, and Mike gave me a C. And so you would think that I would be like, oh, this isn't my bag. I'm done with that. Clearly I'm not cut out for this. But it was a challenging class, but something about it spoke to me. And then as my my college experience grew, I just there was something about it that said, you know what, this creative side of me is always going to be there. I have to try something different. And I thought I can always come back to this. But about halfway through, I switched my major, as a lot of college kids do, changed from art and education to criminal justice, and then minored in those other ones and finished up that way. So that was kind of my educational, background and upbringing. And that's kind of got me started towards this. Now, I can tell you that as I switched my majors, I don't think I ever saw myself being here. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I was, because I think it matters when you come into a public safety agency, and it's the same an agency in the same city that you grew up in. And I really do feel like I am still trying to pay this community back for allowing me to grow up here, and the fond memories that I have of the community, and the investment that I have so many years in this community. So, it's just, I don't know that I would have ever seen this path for myself, but now in looking back 28 years in this job, I can't see any other path. So it's one of those happy accidents, and God has a plan for all of us, and I kind of, sometimes those plans, you don't see them right away, but they come about and they point you in a certain direction.
Yeah. What did you specialize in art? What was your medium?
Well, we had to take a little bit of everything. It was interesting because as you go, they expose you to a little bit of everything in the art program at USD. So, I mean, drawing, painting, sculpture, printmaking. I was a little bit more towards the drawing piece because I kind of like the immediate gratification. Printmaking in itself, is a very process-oriented, and that's, lithography or linoleum cuts, or that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you guys, but just the different processes to do repeatable work. And I was just kind of drawn to the graphic side of the world and the drawing side of the world, and, nothing that would probably... it'd be that old starving artist thing. That literally occurred to me as I start taking these art programs. As I'm like, man, I got to find something else. It's like, I'm not going to be selling art on a street corner.
There's this fine line between pursuing your passion and being able to make a living.
Exactly.
And sometimes those two don't come together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, and that's, and then it finished my degree, started tested for a handful of agencies. Around the time, Sioux City was the first to offer me. So it was one of those things that just timing. If I'd have taken an offer somewhere else I didn't have, I knew I wanted to be in this profession, but I don't know that I had any thought as to where. At the time, we were talking about recruitment and challenges these days. At the time, I remember showing up for the testing at the Sioux City Convention Center. There's like 400 people there. All of us, jockeying for the same few jobs that were going to happen during that length of that list. And so I looked at that group and I thought, I'm never going to get on. Never going to make this nest. Never going to get on. I'll go through the testing as an experience, and so you never quite know. But there wasn't any shortage of candidates back in the day.
Yeah. What year was this?
96.
96. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, so make the list. And how does that work with PD? Like, we have a 2-year hiring list. Is your guys', is it the same kind of thing? Is it a 2-year list? Is it a 1-year list? How long, like when you got hired, how long?
When I got here, it was, I'm sure, very similar process to you guys. It was a 2-year list.
Yep.
And 2-year list for quite a while until, obviously, and I know we'll probably talk about it later in the podcast, the circumstances change, and then you have to, change with the times. But yeah, I was on a 2-year list, and I was not the first one to get hired off my list. There were a handful of people that got hired. But yeah, it was a very similar process, I'd imagine, to the fire department.
And then do you get hired and then go to the academy for a while, or was all your training, was it all here because you already had your degree and stuff? How did that work for you?
Well, my degree really didn't mean anything at the time. You still, back in the day, you still had to go to the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy to be certified. So you would get an offer. There'd be a little orientation. You're swearing in, which I still remember to this day as if it was yesterday. You're swearing in, and then your orientation, and they send you off to the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy where you get certified. And the state law actually allows you to work for about a year prior to academy certification, and that's for the smaller towns that don't have the luxury of getting folks. But Sioux City, thankfully, because I think you need that academy experience. And then you get here and start a lengthy field training process where you go through all the patrol watches, you go to specialty positions, you receive testing, and we have advanced that even since I was in there. We have changed our testing and we have changed our training just for the new environment. So thankfully, and it shows in our young officers, is we have a lot more training and they're a lot better prepared for solo phase and going out on their own than I was probably back in the day.
Yep. So date of hire to being cut loose on your own, how long was that, or how long is it now?
Well, it's almost
Time
the better
wise.
part of a year.
Okay,
So
yep.
nowadays, you have that the academy, which is 16 weeks, and then we have a lengthy field training process. We also do a pre-academy training where we get a lot of orientation out of the way before we even send them off. Orientation training, some upfront training, policy training. We send them to the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. They're gone for several months. They get back, land with us. We do post-academy training. We're actually doing scenario-based training with them so they can understand how we do business here, our call signs, our equipment. That gets them warmed up to getting into a squad car with a field training officer. And then they're essentially spending a month on each patrol watch. And then there's a solo phase after that. There's some, we expose them to every division, have them partnered up with detectives, youth bureau. They basically are given an opportunity to shadow in every part of the department so they understand departmental operations. So literally from the time of hire, depending on how compressed that is or how long they're waiting for an academy spot, from the time of hire to the time that they actually are voted on by the field training staff, and then finally myself as to whether or not they can function as a solo officer is, the better part of a year.
Yeah.
Which is necessary. It's quite necessary because you're about to set that person loose to make very heavy-duty decisions, at the end of that training. So you need to be sure, and there's a lot of layers and a lot of eyes on the recruits as they go through training.
Yeah, that's why I asked. That sounds absolutely terrifying to me.
Yeah.
To be, no matter the length of your training, to, and eventually, yes, you have to get to that point where you turn them loose. But, we have the luxury on fireside when we're on probation, we're always with other people. But on the police side, you get to that point where pretty soon it's just you.
Mm-hmm.
And
because even on a fire rig, even if once you promote your officer, you still got two other guys on there.
Always somebody to bounce things off of,
and
someone with you.
instead of the officers functioning with just themselves until they have somebody else show up. But,
right.
I mean, that's kind of it could be an intense situation for someone. I mean, a lot of responsibility. I think people don't really stop and really think about how much is resting on that officer when they go to any call, really, like what's going through their head, especially because they're going into it by themselves to start with. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility. So, yeah, all the training, everything, and having the people that have the right mindset and everything like that to be able to do it, too, I think would be pretty important. What, I know you kind of talked about all the different, what's kind of was your favorite thing as far as in your career as far as divisions and stuff that you've been in? I mean, what was like something you were like, oh man, some days I wish I could just go back to doing this. I know as a captain, sometimes it's like when you work overtime or get to ride on the back of the rig for a shift, you're like, man, this is so much easier. Just sit on, ride, and look around, and you're just smiling and having a good day and stuff. I mean, what's yeah. Yeah.
I thought about that, and I've kind of asked my wife too, because this is any first responder work, police, fire, EMS. It's difficult. The shift work is challenging on the families, but I had the most fun when I was a lieutenant, which is kind of mid-level management on our department. I know lieutenant is the first step for you guys, but it's just above sergeant. And so I was a watch commander on afternoon shift, which is one of the busiest shifts. So from 2:30 to 10:30, I manage the shift, and the afternoon shift is where most of the young officers go that can't bid off that shift. So I enjoyed, and maybe that's that teacher in me, I enjoyed that teacher mentor part of being the afternoon watch commander. And I also appreciated the balance because I was an administrator, so I was doing administrative functions, and at that level, you go to command staff, you have more of a say in the agency. You can present your thoughts and ideas directly to the chief, so you feel like you have a little more pull. You have the ability to help the chief see, hey, I think we'd like to do this, and I think this would be good for the department. So you have some, like I said, pull within the agency. But then the flip side of that is, I always saw my day going well as we'd go to roll call, and then I'd go get my administrative duties done. So if I had boring paperwork stuff, I would try to get that done up front. Then I would go out on patrol with the officers. And the way I looked at myself is, I'm your cover. And there's no better way to see how your shift is functioning than to attend calls for service with the folks that you manage. And I never wanted them to think that, no, I'm not taking over your call. I'm here as your backup. I'm a fellow officer. And it allowed me to continue to do the work that I love. And I love being a patrolman. I love being a sergeant. I love being a lieutenant. But the further up that chain you get, the further away from the people you serve that you get. And not to mention that, but the further away from the officers you get. And so I was in the thick of it with them. And so, I was still doing a job that I really loved doing. I got to interact with the officers every day. I got to go out in public. It was kind of the best balance of all of those. And then, captain and chief, you're further away from the things happening. You're much more of an administrator. And so, you're getting away from a lot of the stuff that really was my favorite thing to do. And not that I don't appreciate the role. It's a role that I'm happy to serve at. But I do miss that part of it. I miss the interaction. And I'll get out on calls every now and then, and I know I get funny looks when I do, but I never stop being a street cop. And so any chance to get out and assist another officer or be of use, I'll do that.
Yeah. Do people just automatically assume if you show up that they're in trouble? Like,
no.
Oh my God, the chief is here. Oh man, what'd we do wrong?
No, it's funny because just about a week and a half ago, I had an officer that was out with EMS and struggling with a guy behind Marketplace, and I was close by, got out, and the officer was very kind. He came and we got him into custody, and he got a little assaultive and ended up getting him transported to the jail. But the officer came and found me, and he said, it was really profound to me. He said, it's nothing like, he's struggling with a suspect. Somebody comes in to help, and you look over your shoulder, and it's a chief there. And so he was very kind to come up and actually thank me for showing up. And I thought, well, thank you for letting me intervene and work with you, working beside you. I mean, that was a gift to me, the opportunity to go to the aid of a fellow officer. And so I still do it. I don't ever want to forget how to do the job that I came to do. I mean, I can tell you that the young officers on the department are just phenomenal. They're so much better than me in a lot of ways. But I can still function in that capacity. So it's nice to get out and do the job every now and then.
That's awesome, because that's, as you said, the further away, the higher up that ladder you climb, the further away you get from those boots on the ground, as they say. And sometimes it's hard to either bring yourself back or remember where you came from, or still relate to the guys that are out there doing it every day. And it's hard to make that transition.
Well, and I know they kind of call it the ivory tower, as if we somehow enjoy getting away from the work that we went into, to do originally. But administration has a whole different set of challenges, a whole different kind of stress than being on the streets did. Probably an unhealthy stress in some ways, but no, that was at heart. I'm always going to be a street cop. That's the way I look at it. And if we had a new council and a new manager who came in tomorrow and said, "Yeah, we don't like you in that position. We're going to bust you down to patrolman," I'd probably be thrilled. I'd be like, "Thank you." So I'll do it.
Right.
Can I get the keys to the squad car now?
So kind of along with that, and I don't know how much you can reveal, that's your favorite part of the job. What was your least favorite position or least favorite thing to do, or that you thought, oh God, this is awful? Or can you say?
No, I don't know that, quite honestly. Whatever position I was in, I mean, I was happy being a patrol officer. I mean, and I worked just about every assignment in the department. Every role that I was in, it just became a quest to be as good in that role as I could, whether it was rank or position or division in the department. I'm sure there's difficult aspects to every position and things that annoy you and, paperwork and things like that. But I can't tell you that there's something that I disliked or hated. I mean, it was all a part of it. I mean, when you go to an exciting call for service and get in a foot pursuit and chase some guy down, cuff him up, find drugs and a gun on him, and that's thrilling. That's great. I did a good job today. And yeah, I don't like the paperwork, but the paperwork is still there. I still have to do my reports and things like that. So I don't ever remember feeling like I hated it. Now, there is an aspect of the job, and maybe it's that always bothered me, and that's seeing your colleagues hurt and injured. And one of the things, I think it's one of your later questions, but I might as well touch on it, is one of the most difficult things that for me was responding to my officers critically injured. And coincidentally, Kevin McCormick and Jill Ohm and Ryan Moritz, I was their lieutenant when they were shot, and I responded to each of those calls for service. And to have to go find a family member, or, you know, how you're going to manage a scene and manage the emotions of the people there who just saw something terrible happen to their colleague, those are things that, you know, that wear on you, that you think about. They're part of the job. That's not something you expect, but you prepare for. And I would say that seeing my fellow officers, or seeing the officers under attack, whether it's physically or even just verbally in the media, and you know, with national events and George Floyd and things like that, those tend to provide a very negative focus on our personnel, and it hurts because you can see how it impacts them and their happiness and their sense of well-being. So, you know, those probably be, you know, the most difficult thing that, or, you know, hardest things to deal with in the job. But as far as unlikable, I don't remember anything that I absolutely disliked about the job. I mean, this is a fabulous job.
Well, yeah, and let's kind of just, you know, as long as we're here and stuff at this point, let's kind of just stay there too with talking about, you know, you kind of touched on, you know, one thing you said, that the officers now you feel are so much better than what you were, you know, and that, and the way I guess policing or even just public safety has changed over here in the last few years and stuff. You know, we saw, you know, 9/11 was a big boost for, you know, police and fire, especially, just, you know, as far as the first responders and everything. There was money for that, and everybody, you know, everybody was, you know, all the first responders, everybody's heroes and stuff, and it put what everybody did into the limelight. I think for police officers, it was more, you guys are so much more visible, I think, than, because, you know, there's more of you. You drive around town a lot more. I mean, you're just more visible. So people kind of have a perception of what officers do more so than fire. You see, you know, you didn't see what goes on, you know, inside the firehouse, or, like, you know, our call volume is less than what you guys do. So, you know, 9/11 kind of brought in the forefront everything that, you know, all first responders are capable of. But now, yeah, you know, 2020 came, and we kind of had some different things happen in the culture as far as the first responders in the United States, especially law enforcement. So, I mean, I guess with kind of, I mean, it's a pretty broad question that we could kind of march through and stuff. But, you know, as far as your, I guess, the perception or the individuals coming in, or just, you know, how law enforcement, I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to, you know, you guys do your job. But I guess really, how has that kind of changed the culture of the police service and you know, everything since George Floyd, if you want to use that mark in time as just a timestamp, but going forward. But even before that, you know, I mean, you had certain events. Rodney King was another one that, you know, happened that kind of, I think, changed Michael Brown, you know, changed different events that kind of changed people's perception of law enforcement. You never, it seems like it's always something like that. It's never, you know, it's never the officer that held the little girl's hand and walked her home that was lost at the, you know, was lost walking home from school or something. You never hear the good stuff. It's always the bad things. And then it didn't happen in Sioux City, Minneapolis. You know, George Floyd didn't happen here. It happened there. But yet you guys, we still had some events here that you were on the, you know, front lines of that. You were down, you know, downtown when some of that stuff was going on. And these people, you know, you guys aren't the enemies. You know, you didn't do anything. So, I mean, it's like, you know, but how is that kind of, I guess, the culture, and how is that being achieved now versus the culture when you started, you know, kind of, I don't know, it's just a lot there to kind of digest, you know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, when I started, I think we were in a very good place in law enforcement. You know, professionalism was very high. There was, you know, when you went to court, you your word meant something. And, and not that hasn't changed, but yes, events that you said, they tend to blacken the eye of law enforcement. And unfortunately, and, you can say this in any profession. I mean, I remember talking to our chaplain who was a Catholic priest at one time, and he's like, look at how, because of the abuse of a few priests, it has impacted, the entire priesthood. And we're no different. And we get painted with a very broad brush because of the actions of a few. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, and it likely has affected how many people are going to expose themselves to this, because you might have a candidate that is watching all this, that was interested in the profession and sees this and says, well, why would I do that? Mm-hmm. Well, I wish I could get a hold of those folks, because even with all that going on, it is still so important. Public safety in general, police, fire, EMS, they're so crucial to the health and welfare of a community that, and we just recently had Officer Aaron Clark retire, and one of the things I said to him, he didn't want a coffee, but one of the things I said to him at his retirement is, I said, Aaron, you'll never know how many lives you saved, how many people you impacted, how many children or folks you came across where you intervened into a bad situation and totally changed the course of their lives. And that is important work, and had Aaron not been here to be that person for so many people, what could have happened to them? And so, so thankfully, I mean, while numbers are dwindling as far as people coming into the profession, I think that the folks that are, that's a testament to their sense of duty, their sense of community, their desire to serve, that they still want to enter a profession that can be very difficult at times. But the flip side is it's just incredibly rewarding. I can't imagine doing anything where you can have more of a direct impact on your community than this. And so that's what I try to remind people of is the positive things that happen. And one of the things that we've noticed in the last couple of years is we interviewed candidates that are now our officers. A lot of them had these compelling stories about one single contact with an officer. Either they intervened in a difficult situation, be it a domestic in their home when they were a child, or even I remember one of them said that they remember being in traffic and pulling up next to a Sioux City Police squad car and the officer just waving at them. Something as simple as that made an impression, and they're like, that's what I want to do. And so without a doubt, the environment has impacted things negatively. But again, I don't think it hasn't deterred a lot of the good folks that are coming to this profession now, thank God. I mean, I'm happy that still occurs, but to say it's a challenge is an understatement. I think Joe Frisbee, Doug Young, going back, Gary Moss is who hired me back in the day. I think they would all tell you it is a different environment. And some of these social issues come about and prompt change. Sometimes that change is needed. I think in a lot of cases with some of the things that happened, in the last few years, I think that maybe the narrative was off the mark. I think police departments are as professional as ever. I think they're as well-trained as ever. And I think we ought to applaud that, deal with those who step outside the rules, but continue to encourage best practices from the departments and the officers that are still out there doing the job.
I know it's not much that you personally can do on the national level, but as far as Sioux City and Sioux City Police Department is concerned, are there any proactive things that you're doing with the department to get them out into the public to kind of encourage a more positive public perception? Things that you've implemented or things that you're having your officers do to get out there and to show the public that you're not all horrible people.
Yeah, and two words: community policing, mm-hmm. And. That's a phrase that's been kind of an in vogue phrase, and but our department has taken very seriously. And I think, there were officers that were doing community policing from the beginning of their careers, and people will name them off, Bill Blankenship and and all these guys that understood that relationships were key to policing and always did the job that way. But, I know one of the things we're probably going to discuss is technology and changes. And the squad car was probably the biggest deterrent to community policing ever, because an officer didn't see those people in their beat face to face. They were the head going by in the squad car. So technology, radios, things like that tended to separate us from the people that we serve, because now instead of that guy walking downtown, that Ephraim Beta who would direct traffic at 4th and Pierce Street, or that everybody knew, instead of that, we were the head that went by in the squad car on a call for service. So really in the early 90s with the COPS grants, the department recognized that we need to get back to grassroots policing. And that's essentially what community policing is taking any opportunity, whether a call for service or, doing a bike rodeo for kids or attending a neighborhood meeting, to bring people together. And we can train our officers, but nothing works better than to bring citizens and officers together to build empathy. And that means both ways, is that the officers get to see the citizens outside of a call for service and get to know them, and then the citizens get to know that officer too. I mean, hey, this officer could be coaching my kids in football. He's my next-door neighbor. She's my next-door neighbor. And so that whole community policing piece, that we started with the CAST unit and then just basically went department-wide, it is a philosophy that I think has saved and kept the department in a good position with the community. And I have to be honest, we have amazing community support for police, fire, and I think a lot of that outreach is what got us there, is because our citizens know we're a transparent department. We're there with them all the time. And I describe this to a lot of folks. I think we live in a little bit of a bubble in Sioux City, in that we have a very good thing going here. The police, the community, fire, everybody works well together. Everybody seems to be engaged for a common good. And we just assume that, this is the way it should be, right? Mm-hmm. Well, our department does literally hundreds of outreach events, meetings, carnivals, bike rodeos. We'll put on forums with Unity in the community. We'll do block parties. We'll do all these things during the course of a given year, just to get to the public that we serve in a different way. And it is money well spent, because I think it pays dividends, because a community that trusts their law enforcement officers will communicate and they'll participate in the policing process. And I've gone to other departments that I thought were progressive departments, and they'll say, what kind of outreach do you do? And we'll say, about 300, 400, 500 events a year. And they'll say, we just do National Night Out. And that's the limits of what they saw is their outreach. And I'm kind of floored. I'm like, well, why aren't you doing more? I don't say that, but yeah, I really think so much of a key to our ability to function as we do is the relationship with the community. And you're only as good as those relationships. And when bad things happen, the amount of community support that comes out is just amazing. And I'm really thankful that I'm here. I'm really thankful for the support that we have in the community. But most of all, the officers are phenomenal. They're the ones that build these relationships. They're the ones that are out there day to day, making us look good and keeping the community safe. They just do an outstanding job. So for me to sit here and talk about any kind of success, nor accept any credit for it, it's not me. It's the people that do the work, and they're the superstars.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that bubble that I think we really do in Sioux City have it pretty good. I think the community perception of law enforcement here it just doesn't seem like you have. I mean, you got the few bad eggs, and you're going to have that anywhere. That are kind of the problematic. Where for the most part, I think the police department is very respected and in town here, and people like the officers, and I think the community policing like that is a big part of that, because you guys really are out there, and you're visible, and you're interacting and doing all stuff. Your pub ed department, the people that you have doing that are like all the time. They're going to something and doing on that education piece and everything. And it's all, like you said, the relationship building. And Captain Teely Bryan used to tell me all the time, he's like, relationship building is, the number one thing in life, just all the time. And just hammer that into your head because you have to do that. So, that, and we have an easier time because everybody likes firefighters anyway. So, so we have an easier hill to climb to be honest. But then our working relationship with the officers and stuff on scene, I think there is definitely that you guys, your officers care about our safety, we care about their safety and stuff, but everybody works pretty good, responding to things and stuff because which is nice. It makes everything safer for the responders, safer for the community and stuff, and a good deal. But Chief, so as far as like different things, like what kind of policy, the community policing is a big thing, but any kind of other like big policy kind of changes that you would think that happened in your career that, I don't know, maybe kind of and help to, either policy or cultural things and stuff that started, and that would be kind of a thing that's going to be a lasting thing for, for us on the fire side, from when I started to now, the bigger focus on some mental health stuff, the cancer awarenesses, the fitness stuff, our Department of Physicals, things like that have really kind of come about, especially, like I say, especially the mental health thing, and the peer support and everything is a really good thing so that, our younger kids coming in now have a better chance, I guess, of having, if you want to say, a healthier retirement. I think with everything, even the cancer prevention and just the more focus on nutrition and fitness and everything like that, so they can retire better than what we can. What have you seen in your career? What do you think that's kind of in there for that's going to last for the next generation and stuff of guys coming in?
Well, so much. Their change is just constant, and thankfully, I can tell you that anything that we do, any successes that the department has, they're because of the officers and staff. You can bring about these programs that are good for everybody, and I might be able to steer the ship, but if everybody's not on board and doesn't believe in the mission, none of this stuff happens. So wellness has been a huge part of it, and we, those what I mentioned before, we realized we had been missing the boat on wellness years ago when we had some of our officers shot in the line of duty, and didn't realize the long-term impact it had on them. And we had peer support, and we had things, but we also had two young officers, Andrew Duttler and Kevin Hendricksen, who had a psychological, they had advanced degrees and they had a background in counseling, and they helped. At the time, it was Doug Young, kind of start advancing the program. We invested more in our wellness. And then, as I became chief, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to double down on the wellness, and we've got what we call 360 Wellness program, where we're not just steering you towards physical and mental wellness, but hey, you're going to advance your education, some occupational wellness there, changing uniforms that are better for us physically, financial wellness, kind of, if your finances aren't that great, pointing you in the right direction as far as managing your money better, because we don't want that to become a stressor for you on duty. Spiritual wellness, maybe you're a person of faith, maybe you're not, but that if you're a new officer from out of town, and that we let you know the faith institutions that are in town. So really, in the Cortico app, that's a 24/7 access that we thought we invested in, and that's something that we know that everybody's pretty digitally oriented, and if someday you want to find a therapist, you go to your Cortico app and look for a therapist, or you take some self-assessments, or you do things like that. So I'm very proud of the progress we've made in the area of wellness. But part of that for law enforcement is that I think one of the barriers to even those of us especially those of us who have been in the profession a while, is just the toughness that, and we were all told, grin and bear it. It was kind of, back in the day, it was just expected that, you're in a tough profession, you got to be tough. And so we didn't deal with feelings as much as we do, but then you go through your own personal struggles. And I went through a time with, when George Floyd was happening, my wife had been re-diagnosed with cancer for a second time. My dad was dying of pancreatic cancer. There was so much in my life that I'm like, yeah, I need to take advantage of the things that I'm trying to push to my folks. So, it's those things are terrific, and they need to happen for the health of the profession, just like with you guys. But we also need to constantly look at how we can get better at those. You can't say, oh, we got the best program, all right, let's sit back and rest. I mean, I think there's some merit in annual mental health checks and things like that. So from a wellness standpoint, I think we're doing very well. I think from a training standpoint, since I've come on the department, we have expanded training opportunities, constantly looking for grants and things that can provide us with more and better equipment. I think our folks are better equipped than they ever were. Obviously, there's things out there, the newest, latest, greatest. Body-worn cameras is another advance that's been good for the department and shows what the officers do in a true and correct light and how professional they are. I mean, I literally, when I started this job, I tried to track our successes, and it just turned into a multi-page document. And I hung on to it. It was my way of reminding myself how often change happens in this profession. And again, I looked down this list, and some of these ideas came from the lowest, youngest members of the department. Some of these ideas, came from me, from my command staff. But again, the bottom line is nothing good happens without the buy-in of your personnel, that they say, you know what, that's a good idea, or we believe in your mission, or we believe in this, and we're going to follow along. Because, one of the things that I believe, a big believer in servant leadership, but I also realize that just because the city manager or your supervisor or the chief pins bars on your shoulders doesn't mean you deserve that rank. That needs to be earned. And rank only means anything if the people below you recognize it and choose to follow you. So, we can say, once those stripes go on your shoulder, I'm there. No, now it's time to earn it. Now it's time to manage personnel, gain their trust, their respect, be an ethical leader, and then have them be willing to follow you.
Absolutely. You kind of mentioned events in your career that had an impact on you. If you feel comfortable sharing any calls throughout your career that kind of stand out, but good, bad, or otherwise, that kind of stand out in your memory as something that you will always remember for the rest of your life?
9/11, I think, for all of us. I think I remember exactly where I was. I was at home. I was watching NBC and watched the second plane strike the World Trade Center, because they were trying to figure out what was going on. And then it just became immediately clear the world has just changed. And so I went into work, and we were all working long shifts. We shut down the airport. And while it wasn't directly impacting us, we didn't have a plane crash. We knew we were dealing with a general public who were just as shocked by this as we were. And it was just such a turning point in history. And what's sad is it seems like the lessons that we learned were brief lessons, because I think the country really came together for a while there. And differences were put aside, and we're all Americans, and a sense of national pride, and we'll get through this. And I really feel like now there's so much division. And I think back, and I was like, gosh, not that long ago, we were, everybody was hanging. I've never seen so many American flags hanging in my life as after 9/11. And so that certainly impacted me personally. What I mentioned earlier, responding to the shootings of the officers that were my officers. They were my family. They were on my shift. I felt a personal need to help resolve those situations and respond and make sure that they were okay and catch the bad guy responsible. Those will always weigh on me pretty heavy, because you never want to, as a police leader, the last thing you want to do is respond to the critical injuries to your personnel. And that's just, it's just devastating, because this is truly a family, as it is in the fire services, the police department. It's a big blue family. And when something happens to one of us, it's as though it happened to all of us. And so those were probably some of the more impactful. Are there things that I remember? The death of children. I think that's something that constantly wears on me. And when I was a crimes against persons sergeant, I can tell you the name of every child feloniously killed, and whereas all the adults, I can't remember the adults' names. But for some reason, it's like a monument with all of those children's names engraved, and that died at the hands of another, where there was a parent or somebody else, that just stick with me. And as a parent myself, I think that's when it meant more, because I used to be able to shrug those off, and when my wife and I had my son, then all of a sudden those deaths became incredibly personal to me. And having children, it just kind of changed my viewpoint. You couldn't compartmentalize as well as you did, but a lot of tragic things, but then a lot of positive things. I mean, so many good memories of interactions with the public, and there's not a lot of thank yous in this job. I mean, but you really have to go home and look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did good today. I mean, whether or not somebody said anything about it, I changed some lives today and made some impact. So a lot of positives. I can't say that I ever let the negatives outweigh, because there's so much good being done out there. So I think just even those terrible things that we've had responded to, it reinforces why we're out there, and why we do this job, and put ourselves in harm's way.
All right. What do you think? What are some of the biggest challenges then, right? With that, Chief, facing Sioux City specifically, like, not so much nationwide, but like, what are our biggest challenges here? I know, just driving around town, and I can see what our run volume or things that we're seeing more on EMS calls down and stuff. We're seeing a lot. We're seeing more fentanyl. We're seeing the drug overdoses more. We're seeing a transient population now coming from, a lot of them from California, that are flat out saying they're advertising for Sioux City because of the warming shelters. So that, people are coming from California. So that's a, influx for you guys of people to deal with that aren't from, they're not Siouxland natives, they're bringing a different culture and stuff too. So, but what are some of the bigger challenges like right now that you guys are facing as a department?
From just a departmental standpoint, obviously recruitment and getting bodies in the seats is a challenge. And you guys, I know, are facing similar challenges. You mentioned that you didn't used to have to advertise for it before, and now, you really need to get the message out. So maintaining staffing, maintaining positive staffing and dealing with the increased call volume. And you're right, it is different out there. There are more dangers out there, the fentanyl, things that we didn't have to, used to have to deal with. I think that that kind of anti-police rhetoric has created, in essence, a boldness for people that it's almost a badge of honor to attack an officer or to strike out against law enforcement. So it changes the landscape, and that's another challenge too. The homeless issue, that's certainly a challenge. But the one thing I would say is, people tend to live in their own little world, and people that are citing these challenges that we're dealing with in Sioux City, I think everybody, I think local government, I think fire, police, EMS, I think we're responding to those challenges a lot better than a lot of other cities are. And I think it's because of those relationships and the relationships that we maintain among public safety. I'm thankful for the relationship we have with Sioux City Fire. I've been in other cities where there's almost an adversarial, and I don't know if it's because of contracts or I don't know why. I just don't understand it, because we see our firefighters as just on the front line along with us, and there's a lot of reasons for my personal feelings and my appreciation of the fire department. But there's so many. But the issues that we see in Sioux City are not unique. So as much as, fix this homeless problem, well, homelessness is a huge issue elsewhere, and it's a mental health issue, and it's a substance abuse issue, and it's an affordable housing issue. And so many of the issues that we are dealing with in public safety, we didn't create. We didn't start those issues. We're not the solution for homelessness, substance abuse. We're just tasked at dealing with them, and we do that to the best of our abilities. But those are just some of the things. Fentanyl, huge issue. As I understand it, we've had a few people impacted by it personally recently, and just in responding to calls for service. And when we're telling our officers, hey, before you go in there, glove up, You don't want to have any exposures and things like that. But there's daily challenges, and I think one of the things that we are well served by is just being adaptable in public safety. Is that if something else becomes the big issue, then we're prepared for it, and it's only a matter of time. It seems like some of these national trends seem to happen elsewhere, and they're eventually going to make their way here. We're not totally immune to it. I mean, God forbid, but we could be the subject of terrorist attack someday. I mean, that somebody that wants to create fear in the Midwest could do something here in Sioux City, and what better way to create fear, which is the goal of terrorism, than to do something. So those things are always looming out there, and about all we can do in public safety is that, hope for the best and prepare for the worst, which is what I think police and fire are extremely good at, is looking at what could possibly happen, what training do we need, what equipment do we need so that we can respond to it.
I think you look at the accreditation to have, police department that's accredited, fire department, EMS division, and our comm center. We're one of less than 10 municipalities in the whole country that have those credentials and stuff. So it really does show that in Sioux City we kind of try to lead the pack versus trying to do what everybody else does. We try to be in, and people kind of look at us as like, oh, well, how are you guys doing it? I think so. Like you said, I think the problems everybody probably has the same problems, but I don't know. We're just seem to be really good at figuring that out, and it is the relationships and stuff. So, and we are fortunate that because we are in the heart of the country, things happen on the coast. It seems like they happen on the coast, and then they slowly, but we can kind of see what's been happening. So, I mean, we can almost not necessarily pre-plan, but kind of see what the trends are as far as what's happening, what they're doing to deal with it, and kind of almost start to be a little bit more prepared when it does get here, because it does take a little bit to trickle in. But yeah, and the recruitment, of course, yeah, that's a huge thing. So what, like, department, when you started, how big was the department when you started? How many uniform officers on the street did you guys have? Well,
so I mean, obviously there's different divisions. We got the Detective Bureau, Investigative Services Bureau. That's about a fourth or fifth of our numbers, between a fourth and a fifth of our numbers, and the vast majority is the Uniform Services Bureau, so essential services. And when I started, I believe our numbers, our allocated strength was 123. We have little by little inched that up there, gotten a few here. Council usually wanted them, like the mayor was very keen on us adding to our traffic unit and things like that. We're allocated 131. I can tell you that we're not at 131. And when you look at those numbers nationwide, regionally, if you look at those regional numbers in comparison with, using similar-sized departments in this area of the Midwest, this tri-state area, they say, just looking at those numbers, we should have about 25 more officers. If you look at national numbers, officers per 1,000, they say we should have about 70 more officers. And I'm not saying that because we're understaffed. Definitely we can do more. We could be doing more with more officers, but we have been so good at doing more with less, and I think our community partnerships contribute to us being able to do more. But that's it is what it is. But it's one of those things that you have to be very creative, and you have to embrace every aspect of policing and community relationships and technology and leveraging everything that you can to maintain a high level of service. And I think even in the face of the numbers that we do have, I think we're doing a very good job. We need to get our numbers back up. I think with your staff over time, and we don't want to burn our staff out. And I understand that. I mean, their needs, especially the newest generation of young officers, they want a work-life balance. And that's understandable because I think we talked about mental health. I think that's a huge piece in maintaining the mental health of our staff, is maintaining that work-life balance.
What do you like? Excuse me, I got a weird tickle in my throat. What do we call volume then? So you said, officer-wise, we're probably kind of the same as when you started as far as number.
Yeah.
Well, what about your calls to service volume then?
So, it's interesting. It depends on how you quantify things, because there is dispatched calls for service and there's self-initiated activity. So, I remember when I was, young officers, our call volume was 80, 90,000 calls a year. It's less than that, but it's different as to how we quantify. We're not always getting a case number for what we do. An officer that makes a traffic stop or gets out and does community policing. Not a report isn't written for everything that we do. But the other piece is we're asking them to do more than ever before. And you guys know this because when public services are defunded, like mental health, state-sponsored mental health is defunded. And, well, who's going to take up the slack for that? Well, public safety. You guys, we want you guys to take that on. And so for those of us, police and fire, that work 24/7, we tend to be the recipient of a lot of the issues in society that and these decisions that are made, and so suddenly it's our problem. So those things fluctuate. I would say that we're as busy as we ever were, but I think the problems have changed. So while the problems that existed, it was still a tough job when I was a young patrolman, but just the nature of some of the things you guys mentioned, fentanyl, things like that, it changes the nature of our response and how we can do things, and in a lot of ways makes our job more difficult.
And certainly I've learned through fire and police is the same way. Somebody calls 911 and we are their answer. The buck stops with us. So I think both departments are presented with situations that may not necessarily be I don't want to say part of our job description, but not within our scope. But yeah, when people call and ask for help, then you have to figure it out on the spot and figure out a way to resolve that situation, even if it's not something that you may be trained to do. So
well, and we are, you guys mentioned it earlier, the most visible representation of the city that's out there. Yeah. You can't always tell when your street workers are out there, or so many of our services, Parks and Rec, things like that. A lot of those folks go unrecognized because they're not wearing the uniform and the brass that we are. But so people tend to think, when they think of city services, they think of police and fire, and in this case EMS. So we're a visible manifestation of the city of Sioux City, and we have to wear that crown very well. We have to be careful how we represent that, because we represent more than just our respective departments.
Right. And we both know that we can't show up on scene and say, sorry, we don't do that. Yeah. Or we can't help you with whatever's going on. You'll have to figure something else out.
Yeah, and
not an option.
No, and I don't think, and we try to train our folks that that shouldn't be the answer. In fact, a lot of times we're making a referral. We respond to a lot of non-criminal complaints, and so the best thing an officer can do is, if somebody's in need of services, is that we direct them to services. Well, you need this here. Go to the AIDS Center for this. Go to Catholic Charities for this. Let me take you down to the city's neighborhood services division. We'll try to get you hooked up with housing, temporary housing, things like that. So a lot of times we're just problem solving and not making arrests. And I'm okay with that, because a lot of times this intervention and this problem solving, sometimes it helps us avoid a criminal matter that we have to respond to in a different way.
Right. I will say that your officers are really good about those kind of instances where if we go on to either stop to talk to somebody or get a call for somebody that they don't need an ambulance. They don't need the hospital. They just need, they need something, and your officers are pretty good about, hey, like, I can't throw them in the fire truck and give them a ride to wherever, but the, officers will come out and, hey, they just need, to help here, go here. And your officers are usually pretty good about coming out and be, oh yeah, let's go and do this and stuff. So that is, because, we run a lot of, I think, in some of it is, I think, even the mental health calls, I think we run a lot more on now too, it's a thing, like somebody's having a mental health crisis. And what's frustrating, gets hard for us, is because, we don't necessarily, if they've already taken their drugs, they talk to their counselor, they're just like, I can't function today, I need help. It's like, you could throw them in the ambulance and take them to the hospital, but the hospital's going to be like, well, this is not really the place for you either. So that gets kind of frustrating, because I want to help you because you're having a really hard time today. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, really, it's kind of a tough spot. And, the officers deal with some of that before we get called a lot of times, or you're just dealing with it when an EMS isn't called.
And I feel like, and maybe you guys have a similar opinion, but I feel like COVID signaled a huge change. So I feel like, there were probably a lot of folks in society that were managing their mental health issues. And then the isolation and the uncertainty that came with COVID, I think, drove some people over the edge.
Yeah.
And that they were just barely holding it together, and then this happens and they can't have contact and or just the fear of what might happen with that. I think it signaled a huge change, and I think a lot of our mental health issues kind of exploded around that time, and they were always present. But I think there are things that happen that cause an increased need, and I really wish that the state and the feds would embrace that state-sponsored mental health yet again, where they understand that the money, it's money well spent if you are treating the issues that your population is suffering, because I think the last statistics I found said was over 70% of people incarcerated have mental health issues. So that should tell you that we have used jail and incarceration to deal with a mental health problem, which is square peg, round hole.
Correct. Well, and I think when you say incarceration, it's not just jail. I think you look at even the nursing homes. I think every call you go with, it's somebody there got depression, for the nurse. I mean, so it's not just those people, but yeah, I would agree that's the quick fix now. And and it seems like there's resources if you're addicted to alcohol or drugs. There's treatment centers and there's places you could go and stuff. But if you're just somebody that's your anxiety's out of control, or maybe you are diagnosed bipolar, you just have a hard time, or just having a mental health. It's hard. It feels like it's hard to get resources for people that just need somebody just talk to them and just calm them down and get them in check.
Not everybody has insurance. Not everybody has the resources. And I would submit that the most troubling thing is the lack of mental health resources for youth.
Yeah,
there is a distinct lack of society, especially around here, to deal with the mental health issues of our youth, and where do you refer them, and is there services available, inpatient, outpatient, and there's a distinct lack of that. And the sad part about that is those young people, if those aren't dealt with, they're going to become adults with mental health issues. So really where we should be tackling these things are the youth mental health issues, so that they don't grow and result in a lot of these folks that we find out on the streets that had untreated mental health.
And I think you kind of hit on it too, because that's a lot of that generation. What we forget, and I forget sometimes too, is when growing up, as far as big events that happened in our lives that changed what kids, how they, and not really going back and asking them, 9/11, but that was in 2001. So I mean, that was 20 some odd years old, 21. It's a little bit different than something that happened, way ago. But like my kids, COVID would happen when they're, so in 2020, so, my daughter's, what would she have been, like 12, and I mean, grade school, but, to talk about those kids and to sit down and really talk to them about what that did to them and their friends and stuff, because we don't, and maybe sometimes we forget that, or because we kind of all experience our own experience, but how it impacted them, because you can't go play with your friends today. You're supposed to stay inside. You can't go play with them. You can't do that. So my daughter, who is somebody that likes her phone, she isolated and was in her room and just did her thing. That's it. But she's very artsy. She did a lot of drawing and she does stuff like that. But she's my 19-year-old, well, 19 now, but he would game with his buddies all day because, when they couldn't go to school anymore and were, but so he still had social interaction, because that's what they do anyways. Like on a regular day, he's like, they get on their headsets and they're playing. So he was still interacting with his buddies, just not outside. But my daughter would isolate and do her thing. So, it's to sit down and talk with them, about like, how did that growing up, and the, like you said, the uncertainty and everything that they experienced there, and how much were certain individuals that they didn't get out of that, that stuck with them, and they're still, as they grow up now, like you said, that now they get to the point where they're, older teens are getting into their 20s now, that are all of a sudden are still holding on to some of this stuff, that they had to deal with, and not having the resources or knowing how to do it, or not, even just having somebody to talk to say, hey, this is where you can go. I think that we forget about what might have done to our kids,
Well, and I was fortunate. My wife teaches, so my wife was my son's instructor during that time. And obviously in Iowa, we got back to school a lot quicker than a lot of states did. But my wife would sit side by side. She'd teach, and then she'd teach the remote lessons with my son. And so he had a teacher. But I think about all the kids whose parents, who one or both working, and they're alone at home. And they say that those kids are stuck a year behind. They did not, or even more in some of the cities that didn't come back to school and to work sooner. And so I can only imagine how much anxiety and how many issues that has created. And we can only guess that our youth population is a lot worse off because of it. And now we're paying the price for that, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Because you look back now. And at the time, you're doing what you're told or whatever. But you look back and to tell kids that you can't play with your friends, because that's the rules right now. It just seems like an odd thing, but I don't know. But I do think we're dealing with a lot more. It seems like, at least in my career, I know for sure the mental health things that we're seeing and the drugs and the ODs way more than when I started, and that was just in 2002. And it's a lot.
And how much of the drugs are coping mechanisms? How much are people trying to self-medicate or kind of diagnose themselves or provide some relief or escape from other things that and it's sad. It really is. And what's, I'm sure, frustrating for you guys and our guys is that we show up and we're usually a temporary solution to an ongoing problem. Mm-hmm. And to ask an officer or a firefighter to compartmentalize and, hey, this is all the good we're going to be able to do for them today, and we're going to leave knowing we're probably going to be back.
Right. Tomorrow's, to tell them just for tonight, can we get through tonight? Tomorrow's another day. But you and I both know tomorrow's not going to, necessarily be a better day.
Oh, gosh.
And that does make sense. So, let's touch on that, Chief, as far as because you did say compartmentalize and being, first responders, being in that community, we do see, people having hard times, and that, we show up and you try to relate, but, the patient doesn't know what you have going on in your own life, mm-hmm. And even maybe necessarily the guys that you work with don't know some of the things that are going on in your life. But yet we're supposed to be professional, respond, and we're here to help people and stuff. So we compartmentalize, we do things. So what is Chief Rex? What do you do? What's your go-to for your coping stuff, your debriefing, your de-stressing kind of thing? What's your thing?
Just maintaining separation. I mean, there's the things I try to take care of myself. I'm not getting any younger, so trying to stay fit, hitting the treadmill and the weights, and staying active and working in my yard. And but my big thing is, and some people think this is odd. I don't know. Is I have this thing that home is always going to be my safe zone. So when I'm home with my family, and obviously this job interrupts that sometimes, but I try to maintain separation as much as possible. And quite honestly, sometimes it's difficult at home. So work is my piece, just at whatever circumstances might be. So maybe home's really busy and work is, but just maintaining avenues of sanity and just my approach to things. And I've developed a very thick skin over the years. And I realize, and I'm sure Chief Everett is probably telling Ryan this right now, that you're never going to make everybody happy. You can make the best decisions that you can, but you're always going to be upsetting somebody. But as long as your decisions are well thought out and you're doing your best for the vast majority of folks, you're going to be okay. But, I don't know. I think I have tried to keep as healthy approach as I can to maintain equilibrium. And at one point in time, that was going to a counselor, and that was talking through the difficulties that were going on in my life, and then just developing good coping mechanisms. That, okay, for me to have a good week, I need to do this. I need to hit the gym, or I need to do something creative, or it might be I know this sounds silly, but sometimes if I can't bring order to the universe in Sioux City, as far as the police chief, I go home and I clean out my garage, and it might be a small accomplishment, but the cabinet where I put all the car care stuff is clean and organized. So that's my little victory, as funny as it sounds. So, just finding diversions and trying to maintain a healthy approach but it does have its impact. I have no doubt that our jobs as first responders probably impacts our lifespan in ways that it doesn't impact others. But certainly from the mental health standpoint, that's the big one, is that we see these things and we carry them with us, and you can either carry them with them in a way that weighs you down, or you can carry those negative experiences with you in a way that inspires you to go forward. And, I mentioned the children that I recall having died of homicide and stuff like that. And instead of letting those weigh on me, I use them kind of as inspiration, is for a reason for going into the office. And you can always tell on the faces of the officers that now work these cases that how much they can weigh on them, because they're human and they care and they have families, and it's being able to confront this evil, do something about it, and then say, okay, I did something about it. I need to hold on to that. And so far I'm doing okay. That doesn't mean tomorrow I'm not going to crack and have you guys put a ladder up to a tree and stand at the top of it.
Do you still draw, or
what do you fall back on your art at all, or what's kind of hobbies?
It's whenever I can do something creative, and it might be just a little work, painting the house, or like when we do our swag and do a new challenge coin or something, or I'll put pen to paper, and that any creative pursuits give me satisfaction. I always like to sit down, but there's such a lack of time for that. But I really take comfort and enjoyment out of anything that'll allow me to just think in a creative manner, because that's one of those things that fills my bucket, instead of taking things away is creative things and time with family. So not as much as I'd like. I feel like I've kind of left that behind. And to be honest, people ask me, "Oh, you're a good artist." I'm like, "No, I'm not. No," because really it's even with certain talents, artistic talents they need work. You need to do it. You need to practice it. And I was probably better than ever when I was in college and doing art constantly. And now I'm like this amateur, and I have friends. One of my closest friends teaches art in university or in Texas. And so I kind of live vicariously through him. I'll say, "Hey, what are you working on now?" And he'll tell me about the projects that he's doing, because he does it all the time. Whereas me, I can pick up a pen or a pencil and do something, but I'm not very good. I really have to relearn that whenever I do that. So it's kind of interesting. It's not something that you can just do. It requires practice and time and attention. And I tell my wife that I hope that in retirement I have time to get back to that, because I'd like to do something creative. But who knows? By then I'll probably have something else that'll require my time, grandkids or something like that.
There you go. Speaking of retirement, just curious, Have you figured an end date to all of this fun yet, or is it still?
It's interesting. So, I'll have 30 in a couple of years, but I've always told myself, and Chief Everett, he reached a time where he knew, and the only thing that I would pray is that I know when there are better people that are going to do more for the agency waiting to take my place, is that I get out of their way, that I'm smart enough to say, you know what? There's somebody that will do really well at my job, do much better than me. I need to step out of the way. And the other side is if me personally, if I don't have the same passion I do now and desire and energy, and I start slowing down and taking things for granted, then I need to get out too. But I don't know when that will be. I hope I'm smart enough to read the cues, because again, the last thing I want to do is overstay my welcome. Like I said, I look at the officers doing the work today, and they're so amazing. They do a great job. They're dedicated. They're talented. I see our future leaders, and I'm like, man, I need to get out of the way. But until they get there, have we done enough succession planning so that I can walk away and say the department's in really good hands, that we have young leaders that are ready to take these spots? So I really hope I'm smart enough I don't want somebody to come up to me and say, hey, you should really go, or you should have gone 2 years ago.
That'd probably be the worst thing. Yeah. Like somebody said, you should have retired like 2 years ago. You know?
Yeah, I don't want to be Tom Brady. I don't want to just keep coming back and then have a few bad seasons.
Yeah, or Brett Favre.
Just go.
Is that a stab at somebody? So I hope I'm smart enough to make the right decision, and hopefully when the timing is right, and I want to leave. You want to leave the department, or you're in a better place than you found it. Not that it was. I inherited a fabulous department from Doug Young, but again, I think Doug will tell you too. The credit goes to the personnel. It's we can lead and manage the agency, but nothing happens without their say. So they are the superstars, the line officers, the sergeants, lieutenants, the captains, the civilian staff, CSIs. They all are part of the big puzzle, and I'm probably the least important cog in the machinery as far as our success goes.
What year did you become chief?
Let's see here, 2017.
17. Okay, so been a hot minute then, huh? How about with that too? Is there any as far as your tenure for chief and stuff so far? Any initiatives or programs? Like what's something that you're really proud of? Whether it was something that somebody from the line personnel brought up that you were like, hey, that's a great idea, let's implement it. And you're still like, you tell her, when you go to conferences or you talk to a chief from another department, you're like, this is our thing. This is something that just makes me go, yes, this is our thing.
How much time do you have? Because I could rattle on this a whole lot.
Got a whole list.
I got to tell you though, the first thing that comes to mind, because
Chief Mueller, he came really prepared. Like I think you're probably the most prepared guest we've had. This is color coded, and you guys can't see it, but it's highlighted. He's like.
Well, I didn't want to forget anything, but honestly, one of the first things that I think of is our rescue task force operations with the fire department. And there was when we developed that. I was a lieutenant when we developed that, and there was no training curriculum anywhere. We just looked at our tactics and our training, and we looked at what the best way to operate would be and how we would want to get you guys into that warm zone to care for victims, and we just developed our own curriculum. And what's funny is the curriculum has followed us, and it's pretty much what we put out there. But one thing I have to give credit to, and that was an amazing time, because that was really, I think that we always worked well together. But I remember going to each of you guys' classes here at the training center, and I'd go through my presentation, and then we'd do movement drills. And I know when we began this discussion, asking you guys to go into our area is like you guys asking our folks to go into a fire with you.
Yeah.
So absolute credit to everybody in Sioux City Fire Rescue. You guys were superstars. You saw that, this isn't in our bailiwick, but you trusted us to take care of you in these situations, and that collaboration. I think, to some degree, that collaboration back then is one of the reasons we enjoy such a great relationship, is because I think that we could show up and you guys would be like, yeah, let's go. We're comfortable with you. We know you guys can protect us. We trust your training. And that was one piece, but I have to give props to all your staff, because again, that's like asking our guys, hey, come on into the structure fire with us. What? And you guys adapted and did that. Just everything, our training advances, some of the technology that we've employed over the past few years. Recently, Captain Bertrand and his staff have upped our cyber crimes ability, so that our ability to deal with, computers, phones, things like that, draw data to verify our cases, because so much of what is done today, is on a computer, and everybody's got a computer in their pocket. So, our ability to do that, just the expanded outreach opportunities, our community cultural liaison program, our work with Unity in the community and the NAACP to maintain positive relationships. We spoke about it earlier, our wellness, just our wellness programs to make the department better. The downtown crime initiatives, just the fact that as we identify issues, that we immediately deploy to work on those issues. We spoke about homelessness. People have no idea that, how active we have been in solutions that we really aren't the subject matter experts on, but at every meeting for homeless initiatives, the police department's there, and we're ready to offer our services. Our continued adherence to accreditation and CLIA. I mean, we had our 9th accreditation, and we'll have our 10th pretty soon, and that's huge. That virtually every person in my agency now, nobody that's operating the police department was part of the police department before accreditation, so they don't know any different. They just best practices has been part of their career since they began, and there is too many really things to touch base on, but one of the things that I'm proud of is my thought was never wait for strategic planning, never wait every 3 or 4 or 5 years to make improvements. If we see something happening out there, as you guys mentioned, something's happening on the coast, this might be a problem for us. Let's problem solve, and let's get equipment and training in place so that, God forbid, if something happens here, we're prepared for it. Just being proactive about everything that we do. So literally, it would take me a long time to roll down the list of successes of the department. And again, we can push them, but I give credit to the officers and staff. They're the ones that make it happen. And I'm so proud of them. And when I see their work every day, I see them out there, hear what they're doing. I'm really humbled because I'm just like, and I believe in servant leadership. And I've said this in a public, and I really mean it. We're all public servants, and we serve the public, but I also feel like part of my job is to serve the officers. And so in a lot of ways, I look at myself as the lowest ranking person on that department, because I come and my day starts with making sure that I am taking care of them and meeting their needs. And sometimes that's a challenge. But that's the philosophy that I got to wake up with is, what can I do to make the community better, and what can I do to make the officers' lives better and the staff?
Yeah. When you talk about your cyber, they made it look, is on HBO Max, the one crime, it was like the real crime stories or something, like when they did that. Yeah. Where they talked about, they're like, the investigation unit, they shot it, the people that are watching it were like, wow, Sioux City's super fancy. Look at all these screens up on it. It was shot in the TSI. Okay.
I got a little joke about that. So one of the things, Mike Manthorn has a wicked sense of humor. He's a pretty quiet guy, but one of the things, they made it look like we had a real crime information center based on that, because that's their show. And I get it. They kind of staged that. And Mike said, hey, if the council's ever asking for budget cuts, tell them we'll give up the real crime information center, which we don't have.
Oh, darn.
So it'd be like, I'm sorry, but we'll have to cut this out. So
have to let it go.
No, it turned out really cool watching that, and I saw some of the detectives that were on the show. We saw them out when we grabbed lunch one day and stuff. We're like, hey, you guys did a really good job on the TV there. But it was cool. But that was still kind of cool, like watching that, and to realize, like, and even talking to them some, like how much, as far as legitimacy of everything going on, and just how much access to just data and cameras and all this stuff. Like, I mean, you guys like literally like investigate things just like on TV. I mean, you really, to figure out all the steps and everything that happened from that episode to go to get the hospital cameras of this vehicle, and then you're pulling basically pod cams from all over town and stuff and getting footage of everything and doing. I mean, it was really neat. I'm like, wow, these guys are like legit here.
Oh, it's huge. And I mean, we're trying to get the LPR cameras, which we got a grant for that, and we're placing those, and that helps us track vehicles by description, by plate. So anytime we can leverage technology to service our cases, and those things that they might not be the one break in the case, but they might support a case, is those little bits of technology, geofencing a phone or tracking a vehicle, or a partial photo, or the CSI work. It all goes to assist in a successful case resolution. And again, that's why we use technology, or try to leverage technology, so that the officers' jobs become easier, and that we're able to put more bad guys away.
What, I guess, in technology, I mean, police, I think there's a huge amount, for fire service, coming in, thermal imagers was a huge thing. Our gear's gotten better. SCBAs are gotten better. Just improvements in equipment here and there, as far as technology. Now we got, MDTs and stuff that we have a lot of information available at our fingertips. But, at the end of the day, fire is fire and water is water, and that's how we do stuff and stuff. But what are some, I guess, with the technology, some of the biggest things that, really changed how you guys could, because the thermal imager for us really changed how we were able to do search. And even now, we're still doing more training on really utilizing that thermal imager to all its capacity and stuff, and understanding it. Because, when you can see, walk into a room that is, smoke floor to ceiling, and you can't see your hand in front of your face, but that camera can still find a body. That changes our tactics. That changes how we can do search and how and stuff. So, what was some of the, as far as technology changes, some of the biggest things that actually changed the way you guys operate?
From an investigative standpoint, that camera piece, mobile forensics. Again, who will go somewhere without your phone? The phones contain a tremendous amount of energy or information that can be mined for investigative purposes. The body-worn cameras, that was a huge way to back up what the officers were doing. That was a tremendous increase. And just some of the little pieces of equipment. I'll say this, if you like toys, firemen have the best toys. You guys, the big fire engines, I'm still in awe when you guys come pulling up with all your cool stuff. And we've got that less so, but sometimes it's individual equipments, our weapons, our less than lethal platforms, the tasers that allow us to try to de-escalate other than, using force other than lethal force. Some of the devices that we're able to deploy, some of the thermal imaging stuff, the drones. We realized how important that was recently with the flooding and how we needed some new exterior drones. So all of this technology, is important. But can you use that technology to pull the information out? So it's great if you've got the equipment. It's how do you use it? And so you need to train your staff on it. And you could have a whole fleet of drones, but if nobody's a certified pilot, then it's not going to do you much good. And if you don't maintain your equipment when you get out to fly it, it doesn't fly. It's no good. So, there's been so many advances, and change is just part of the game. I just come in expecting on a weekly basis that, geez, this is a new thing. We're going to need one of these. If we better budget for it, or we better find the money because, it would be incredibly valuable. And sadly, sometimes these things happen because of tragic events or difficult events where you realize that you need something, like our SWAT team involvement in the incident in Hornick. That hammered home how important for us as a department and our tactical unit to have armor, to have the ability to deflect some of that gunfire. And those guys I was there with them. I wasn't right in the scene, but the amount of gunfire and the stress and the situation that they were put into because of a lone gunman was something that I hope I never see in our career. Thankfully, our guys handled themselves incredibly well under greatly difficult circumstances, and all of those officers were awarded a Medal of Valor for obvious reasons. It's an incredible situation, and so sometimes this stuff comes out of challenging situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You look at you can see the holes in the AMRAP down there and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
those guys, that was a thing, So where was I? I was on a spot that I kind of spaced it. But no, Chief, we talked about, so let's talk about your officers and stuff and go back, because I know you're talking about, you could tell your passion for your people for sure. They're seem like they're the number one thing for you and that day, and you genuinely care. And as far as, for a department head to have that, that as somebody that would be on the line, that goes a long way, especially for that junior officer, that new guy and stuff. Like you said, for the chief to show up and help, just with you struggling with somebody, that's a big thing. So, but when you're looking for officers or guys, people and stuff, and what's kind of like the best qualities that you're looking for, or kind of the mindset that you guys need for officers now, especially with the culture, I guess, that we're dealing with, because we talked about a cultural change. And, even talk with when we had Sheriff Drew and stuff on that, going back and talking about, how, when you guys started, or even when he started law enforcement, it was more that hard knuckle, the cops, and you could, you kind of not necessarily rough people up, but I mean, it's basketball when Michael Jordan played basketball, and the Pistons had Jordan rules, versus policing today now is a little bit different, I mean, what kind of qualities are you looking for in people?
I think the one thing that you can't ignore is, the first thing you have to look at, obviously you got to be fit to do this job. Obviously you got to have a certain amount of intelligence. Ability to communicate is huge. You can talk yourself into or out of more fights, than your fists can. But I think the one non-negotiable is integrity. If you don't have, and when we swear them in, the judge does an oath on the swearing in, and then I also administer the oath of ethics to them, where it's to make sure that they understand that, hey, no matter what, we can train you, and you're going to crash squad cars, and we frequently do. You're going to mess up on paperwork. You're going to make mistakes. We can fix that. We can work with you. We can fix cars, but one thing we can't fix is your integrity. That is something that you need to hold above all others is that integrity piece, and understand that our officers have a tremendous amount of power. We can impact people's freedom by our actions, and that's a tremendous responsibility. So making sure that the candidates have a good moral compass is a huge part of that. From then, a lot of the stuff that we expect them to do can be taught. I mean, a lot of the firearm skills, a lot of the legal knowledge, a lot of that are things that can be taught. But then there's another kind of intangible piece that I always think of. I really think that people in public safety, and maybe firefighters are the same way, I think you're wired from birth to be able to do this job. Not everybody can do this job. Mm-hmm. And to walk into a situation, where there's gunfire or there's a fire and you show up and, okay, let's do our job. That takes a special person, and you need to, and some people only discover that because we've had folks that came on the job, experienced a stressful event and said, I'm done. I'm not cut out for this. So I think to a certain degree, you need to be made for this job. You need to have to be able to be calm in a crisis. You need to have to be able to de-escalate. You need to revert to a training mindset when it requires, so that that you just automatically kind of go into machine mode and you do this, and this. But then that you can also shift gears and show compassion to a child whose parent was just injured in a domestic or something like that. But I mean, so many of these things can be taught. The integrity piece, huge. And then something that I think is especially important, not just for the officers, but for the leadership, is humility. None of us has all the answers. None of us is perfect. And I think the willingness to show that we're all human, to apologize when we make mistakes, to show the human side of ourselves to people, I think that, that's an important quality too. But, the variety is what makes us good. I mean, the fact that I imagine the fire department's the same way, that we have all these people coming together with different backgrounds and different experiences, and you invest them all in a community problem, and some are really good at dealing with this, and some are really good at dealing with this other issue. But when they work together as a team, those combined experiences and backgrounds just make for a powerful team. You don't want a team that are exactly alike, that deploy the same skills. I mean, I don't think you solve as many problems doing things that way, but we ask a lot of them. We really do. It's a tough job, and public safety in general, it's a tough job. And the people that do it have so many incredible qualities. But there's some non-negotiables, and there are the other things that I believe we can train.
Yeah, and while it's important, sometimes whether it's police or fire, and so even EMS. Sometimes I step back and think for a second. Like, we have the coolest job in the planet. Like, we literally. I feel like sometimes we're just a bunch of kids, we're just like the little rascals, just jumping on the fire engine going, yeehaw, as we go down the street. Like, I mean, there's no, you don't show up on scene, there's no computer, there's no phone telling you exactly what to do. You're not looking through a flip book saying, okay, with this, you answer this, and now I say this. And like, we are going and we're just doing our jobs, I mean, and it's so cool to just be, and just sit back and thinking like somebody's trusting me with a $500,000 piece of apparatus. I got 2 other guys on the rig. The sun's shining. It's a great day, and we're going to go and and do this stuff, and just because that's what we're doing. And same thing with officers. You have that responsibility and just going, but it's on you to do it. There's no playbook for every situation, and you just got to really go back on your training and your ethics and your core beliefs and your morals and everything, and then just do the best that you can with what you have. But I just think with just the amount of it's like playing a video game that's not linear. It's one of these open world games that you can just go everywhere and do anything, and that's kind of what our jobs are almost. It's amazing. So, any advice that you would give to younger people starting out?
And it's going to sound like a recruiting pitch, but bottom line is this is public safety, and I'll make a pitch for fire and police. This is an incredible profession, and I think that people that do this job, it's a very difficult job, but it's a life well lived. I mean, you really, and every job in our society is important. I mean, we all work together for a common good. But if you want you want a life where you can look back and be proud and be proud of your service. I mean, public safety is such an amazing profession. And I could I have done some good as a teacher? I'm sure I could have impacted some kids, in a positive way. But I'm just like, I don't know what I'd do if I hadn't done this. I can't imagine a life different than that. So, if there's prospective candidates out there, I'd say this is a worthwhile profession. Please come into it. I don't think you'll have any regrets. It'll be challenging, but nothing worth doing is easy. And this is one of those things that it can be very difficult and very challenging, but the rewards are just immense. So, I mean, anybody that would listen, I would push them towards police, fire, because they would really, the satisfaction that comes from doing these jobs is just immense. And the fact that you can go home and feel like you had a firsthand impact on your community and really see that in action. So, I mean, there's just a great job. It's a great profession. You get to work around great people. I mean, my fellow officers, that's what I come to work for, and the staff. And then working with you guys is a pleasure every time. And, I just enjoy I see a fire truck. If I try to wave at the guys and let them know they're appreciated. So, I mean, this is a meaningful life. And I think if somebody's seeking meaning, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better job than police officer or firefighter.
Nice. So then remember you SIG or Glock?
Okay, so right now I've got a Smith & Wesson. So, but I'm going to transition. So a lot of the guys the optic sights, the pistol sights are the newest things.
Yep.
And as I get older and my eyesight is not as good, I'm still a really good shot, but I don't know that I'm a brand snob. If you put anything in my hand, and I can shoot pretty well. So,
yeah.
But no, I didn't make either. Very happy.
No loyalty to either.
Is that? Did I split the difference? What?
Yeah. No, it's just when we get officers, when people, no, that's when we get officers. Everybody lies. I just kind of throw that out there, just because either a SIG guy or a Glock guy. It seems like.
No, that's kind of like the
SIG
Ford
guys are
Chevy.
Ford Chevy. Exactly.
Yeah. And that'll say Chevy. So
yeah. So as we're kind of made it through our list, I mean, a lot of stuff, Chief. I mean, I tell you what, like if anybody, except that being a firefighter is awesome, and I never want to be a cop. However, if I had to be a cop under somebody's tenure, I think you'd be the guy that would be somebody that I think I would have enjoyed being an officer under your watch, and on this department, just because how well Sioux City PD functions and pretty high-speed individuals and stuff, and to have the right people in the leadership with the right values and the right direction for the department and really caring about their people and stuff that are doing the dirty work out on the street and stuff, because those, like you said, those are the ones that do the stuff. You can, as a chief, you're putting a plan in place. You might put the map on the ground and say, we're going to go from point A to point B. but everybody else has to drive the ship, right? Everybody else has got to power it. We still got to steer it and stuff. You can set the course, but that's, at the end of the day, you know, if you try to do all the work, you make the lowly guy that's, putting coal in the boiler unhappy because you're, micromanaging everything he does. So set the course and let people do it, which is fantastic from that side. So, like I said, being a firefighter is, still way more awesome, but it would, I like your approach to things and the way everything. But so as we wrap things up and stuff, is there anything, we tell every one of our guests, as far as your family hearing this and stuff, that this is an archive thing, it's going on the interwebs, it's going to be there for a long time and stuff. So anything, you want to share about your family, your personal life, any messages to your kids or anything like that you can, who knows how long the YouTube and the internet stays around for and stuff, but how many years down the road they could say, it could be like, hey, there's Grandpa giving an interview or, that kind of thing. So,
well, only that nothing happens without family, and you guys know this. My wife, I wouldn't do this job. I probably wouldn't even have rank if I hadn't had my wife pushing me. And my wife always wanted what was best, and I've kind of been a reluctant leader throughout my career. As I was always happy where I was at. I enjoyed what I was doing, and when other people say to you, "Hey, you should test, you should promote," and you take that to heart. Maybe you don't see those things in yourself, but you have other people that are pushing you and encouraging you. And my wife has always been my biggest supporter, and obviously my son too. I mean, this is not an easy career, and there have been times when I've asked my wife, what was the hardest part of my career, and she would give me her assessment of that, and I thought, you put up with all that. And anytime I'm asked, it's like, it's any successes that I have personally are due in large part to her and her encouragement and her support, because it's not easy being a police officer's family member. And, the thing is, we can do something about it when we're out on the street and we're dealing with things. And I was on SWAT for darn near 20 years. And when I would leave for a SWAT call out and not be able to call my wife back for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12 hours as we would deal with these things and the uncertainty that they deal with, I'm at least in the situation. They have to be remotely wondering what's happening. And then when we get home, the relief sets in. And then, with George Floyd, when we're criticized, they take that on just as much as we do. So in a lot of ways, they might not face the physical danger that we do, but they absorb so much of the difficulty of this profession and still support us. So my wife, my son, my parents, my dad has since passed, and I think one of the greatest things that ever happened was my dad had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he lived to see me become the chief. And my dad would send me a text every day, still smiling. And that meant more than anything that my dad had, lived to see that. And that was important to me. And it didn't minimize the position either, because, like I said, I would call myself a very fallible leader. I'd say I'm trying to be a student of leadership. I'm trying to earn it. I don't consider, that I walk into the office and, hey, there's a chief. It's like, no, I got to walk into the office every day and earn this. And I make mistakes. Sometimes I get it right. But at the bottom line is, as you guys said, I care about everybody at that department. And whether they know it or not, I am invested in their success and their happiness. And each one of them means something to me. And they're members of the family. And it's my greatest pleasure is to serve them and to take care of them. But it's an honored role, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to serve, and again, the credit goes to everybody but me. I mean, my family, the officers, they deserve the lion's share of it. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you guys I'm anything special. I'm just a guy who is in this role, trying to earn it each day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tough to top that.
I know. Yeah, for real. I mean, it's just, yeah. Chief, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day, and busy man and stuff. You had lots going on, but you did come and sit down with us, which we greatly, greatly appreciate. We'll be coming up again another episode this month. We'll release it next couple months here some more, and we got hopefully new Fire Chief Collins will be coming up here in October for a 2-year anniversary. So far, like knock on wood, we're almost to 2 years. I think when we started the podcast, we were hoping to get through episodes like 1, 2, and 3, and here we are approaching our 2-year anniversary. So it's a really cool thing. So like I said, we appreciate you immensely for coming on, and for special guest Paul Hendricksen coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Because Moorhead is lazy. But that's here to Paul. But you be the special guest. You want to take us out?
Oh, what do I do to take you out?
You got to tell Baker to drop the tones.
Oh, drop the tones.